Welcome back to another episode of Radiant Others. My name is Dan Blacksburg, and I'm recording as always from my West Philly basement. Today on the podcast, I get to go right around the corner and stay in my neighborhood because I'm going to introduce you to a ton of people who are making Yiddish culture right here in West Philly and throughout the Philly area. I got to tell you folks, I've been doing klezmer and I've been involved in Yiddish culture for a really long time, over 2 decades. And even within that, as you'll hear, I really committed to making part of my life in Philly, bringing Yiddish culture to people and bringing people to Yiddish culture, especially klezmer music, for over a decade now. And at no time in all that time have I seen more and more exciting things happening than what's happening in Philly right now. If you haven't been here before, Radiant Others is a place where I get to introduce people and get in depth with all my dear friends who I've been battling about in this Yiddish world, and also people from outside who, we're Radiant Others. That's who we are, or at least that's a big part of who we are. And usually I get to talk to people who have been doing this for a long time, or people who have a big project that are coming up, and they usually live in places like New York or Western Massachusetts, or maybe even the Philly suburbs if you're talking about my couple episodes with Susan Watts that you should go check out in our archive. And if you're a regular listener, you know what the podcast is about, but I don't know if you know all these cool cats who are doing some serious work right here in Philly. This is a live episode, and it's got the most people we've ever had on a single episode of this podcast. On January 10th, I got together at my home synagogue in West Philly, Kol Tzedek Synagogue, where I lead the inimitable Simcha Band. We just rocked it on Purim. And I got together with all these folks: Miriam Coppersmith, Maddie Rabin, Izzy Abraham Ravison, Elliot Beck, Daniel Stern, Sophie Rose Seymour, and Jonathan Leibovic. And these are just some of the people. We got together to talk about this rapidly emerging, this rapidly coalescing Yiddish cultural scene. We talk about Shtetl Philly, which is a peer-led Yiddish culture set of workshops and gatherings. We talked about Philly Yid, which is a Yiddish conversation club, all these people's backgrounds and how they found their way to Yiddish, because this podcast, as always, is about inspiration. People who are inspired in this group of people to create a community-led, no Yiddish needed production of Fiddler auf dem Dach, a reading where they got to just get into it with, the classic thing that's Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish. It's such a powerful gateway and also a beautiful piece of art on its own. We got a bunch of my fellow klezmers up there, and we talk about the music and how it's affected us as musicians and how we came to it, or how it's blowing our minds on a regular basis and driving us to learn more or make it a bigger part of our entire musical lives. We talk about art and all this stuff. It's wild. There's so much cool things that are happening here right now, and I've barely scratched the surface. That's what's so exciting. I'll be honest, there was a while when in Philly, I kind of thought I could keep track of, if I wasn't directly involved, I could at least keep track of everything that was going on that was Yiddish related. And now, boom, completely impossible, the way it should be. So I'm so pleased to share this conversation with all these amazing and up-and-coming and arriving and arrived artists with you. And if you happen to be in Philadelphia or want to come visit us this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, March 7th and 8th, we've got a Shtetl Philly set of workshops happening in West Philly. I'll be doing something that's akin to klezmer office hours, where you come in and you just ask me, hey, I need a song that's like this, or I'm feeling like this with my klezmer music. How do I make this part better? Or, man, what resources are out there for me to dive into? And I'll be like, here's this website. Here's this information. Check out this recording. I'm looking forward to it. And, come join us. Come join us in West Philly. Yes, I know you all know about the Fresh Prince thing if you're of a certain age, but 2026, right now, real things are happening here. I'm really happy that this particular episode and some other events that are be happening later this year are sponsored in part through a grant that we got through Kol Tzedek Synagogue for the Yiddish Book Center's Yiddish Arts and Culture Initiative. And I'm really grateful to the Yiddish Book Center for all the work they do and for these resources. And we're always looking for more resources with Radiant Others. We've got so much more we would love to do, and we just are not able to with what we've got. We're so grateful for what we have, and we definitely want a lot more. So patreon.com/Radiant Others, tiptopjar/Radiant Others. You can find them at the link in the show notes, and you'll find links to all the people we feature on today's episode. So without further ado, here's my conversation with all these amazing cats from our Philly klezmer scene, our Philly Yiddish scene. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Radiant Others Klezmer podcast, recorded actually above ground in West Philadelphia for a change. Thanks so much for everybody for being here, and thanks everybody up here for being here. You all know me, I'm Dan, and I usually do the longer intro when I'm alone and talking before the episode, but this is the inaugural event of our West Philly Kol Tzedek Synagogue Yiddish Book Center cultural, I forgot all the words, cohort thing. So we thank you, Yiddish Book Center, for making it happen and allowing us to do some really cool stuff. And we're going to get started with just getting to know people, an opportunity to get to know. So I'll say that I've been doing klezmer music and involved in the Yiddish cultural scene of the world for almost 25 years, closing on 25 years. And I've been doing things regularly year-round in Philadelphia, mostly in West Philly. Performances for a really long time, but like community work, involving people, building stuff for over 10 years. And in that whole time, I have never seen more exciting stuff going on that I've had absolutely nothing to do with. It's great. Directly in a moment, and what's amazing is is not only is there a lot happening, but there's a lot of more different kinds of like engagement with Yiddish and Yiddish culture and Judaism and Jewish culture and what we want to build, different kind of ways of engaging with audiences and community that than I ever thought could be around here, especially inside the city. And so tonight is an opportunity to get to know a bunch of people who are doing that. And so we're going to go down the line, and so we'll let the guests introduce themselves. And let's start with introduce yourself however you'd like, and tell us a little bit about what you are doing with Yiddish or in Yiddish or Yiddish culture, klezmer music, and all that stuff, just for now.
Hello. Ooh, hello.
It's on.
It's on. Hello. Hey, everybody. I'm Joni or Jonathan Siddhartha Lipovic. I use any pronouns. I live very close by here in Southwest Philly, and what do I do in Yiddish culture? I mostly play accordion and play Yiddish music, including klezmer music with the Katzenmusik, and occasionally the Kol Tzedek Simcha Band. Some other musical projects, like Posas Galacticas, Bad Salmon, whatever other Third Eye Blind cover band in Yiddish. That's coming. Watch out for that. You can't see right now, but Elliot is nodding very enthusiastically. And yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah.
I'm Sophie. I study Yiddish. I am a printmaker and make prints in Yiddish, and encourage other people to do so, and then also do some performing in Yiddish in theater and increasingly small forays into music.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I use she, her pronouns. And along with Miriam, started Shtetl Philly, which runs peer-led workshops about Yiddish culture, Yiddish language, and the thing that I do most is probably Yiddish dance and a bit of singing with the Kol Tzedek Simcha Band.
Hi, I'm Miriam. Maddie and I created Shtetl Philly, and I also dance lead and teach Yiddish dance in Philly and perform in Yiddish, mostly theatrically, but also musically.
I'm Izzy. I like they pronouns best. And I am one of the sort of core team members of Philly Yid, which is a local conversation group in Yiddish, open to people of all levels. So we just meet every other week and talk in Yiddish for as long as we can before our brains break. And I also taught one of the Shtetl Philly workshops for the inaugural project on Yiddish political song. I'm much less of a performer and much less of a group sing song circle. I want everyone singing together all the time, even people who think they don't sing and don't never want to perform. And then also I'm organizing Fiddler auf dem Dach, the workshop of Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish. Here, again, the idea being this is not for professional performers or advanced Yiddish speakers. More than half of the cast had never spoken Yiddish before we started. So just really trying to find fun, connected entry points for people to access Yiddish language, often through song.
Hey everybody, my name is Elliot Beck, he, him pronouns, and I play klezmer drums, and mostly is my main engagement with Yiddish. And I play with the Simcha Band, Nicole Tzedek. I play with the West Philly Orchestra, Die Katzenmusik, and Bad Salmon. And recently started playing the cymbal, the Yiddish klezmer hammered dulcimer, and also do some organizing of concerts and things like that, occasionally political things involving klezmer and Yiddish music.
I'm Daniel Stern. Hello, everyone. Any pronouns are good. I'm a musician and a music teacher. I started playing klezmer music really when I moved to Philadelphia 5.5 years ago. Came to klezmer, I guess, sort of through playing Eastern European and Balkan folk music, and have been lucky to have multiple great mentors, Dan and Susan Watts, who I have an ongoing sort of apprenticeship, mentorship, friendship with. Trumpet player, I play trumpet and violin, and play with West Philly Orchestra and Bad Salmon and all the same bands. Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to be. Yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. You hold on to that. And I think so I'll just say again, for me, there was a huge shift in my life and my relationship to Yiddish music in about, I'd say 2015, when I'd been playing professionally for almost 10 years and had played all over the world, very fortunate to have all the experiences that I've had, but my relationship to teaching klezmer music and sharing it with other people was really at places like Klez Camp, Klez Canada, one Yiddish New York, because I think that only one had happened yet, or maybe zero had happened at that point. And some reason I was talking to my friend Dory Byrne, who's a big friend of so many scenes, including this one, and we decided that I was just going to do something we called klezmer in the afternoon at her house. She lived on Hazel Street, and so every first Sunday, usually, I'd go to there, and I would just teach a klezmer tune by ear to whoever showed up. And after about 6 or 8 months of this, we realized we could do a dance party. So we did the dance. We did a set, and then Susan Watts led mostly suburban klezmer community orchestra that were all reading charts, and Steve Weintraub led dancing because he had just moved to town. And it was for me, it was completely transformative to choose to do this year round. That was the first time that I think I had chosen to do this year round outside of just being a gigging musician. And it was completely transformed my relationship to this music, just to be thinking about it that often and not sort of putting parts of myself, parts of my engagement with Yiddish music away for 6 months at a time, basically, because, Klez Camp happened over Christmas break, Klez Canada happened over the summer, so not quite 6. But, and And then over the time of those, intervening years, I found myself sort of having to do a little bit of or at least dabbled in sort of a little bit of everything that, a lot of you have mentioned, like leading a Yiddish song workshop, I think at Kol Tzedek, like a socialist songs were like many years ago, and then, trying to get people to get dancing and all this stuff. And now to watch everybody come in and take up like your own stake, like make a stake, like plant yourselves at each of these things. It's so exciting to see it because one person can't really, there are a couple people in the Yiddish world who can sort of avatar the entire, like Michael Alpert, who just won the Dreaming in Yiddish Award, is somebody who can kind of, he's an incredible dancer, he's a great musician, he can sing, he's fluent in 17 languages, whatever. But I'm not, I just play the trombone, and do a lot of organizing and like teaching and stuff. But this is so exciting to do the ecosystem, but that's like, so the next question, and I think we can just go backwards down the line, is, okay, so, Daniel, you kind of already mentioned your relationship to Philadelphia is a really pretty recent, and then also, so like, yeah, what were some of the early experiences that sort of, what I always find is that with Yiddish, people who get hooked on klezmer or Yiddish, it takes more than one hook. Usually you can find 5 to 8 hooks. You're like, oh, you fell in love with the music because of this record. Oh, your parents happened to go to this concert. I'm just telling my story. Your parents happened to go to this concert. You fell in love with this record. Oh, it turns out your grandfather really spoke Yiddish a lot, but you didn't really think about it ever. Oh, turns out you're actually related to one of the major klezmer clarinetists, but we didn't know that until after I've been playing klezmer for a couple of years. And like, oh, I happened to go to New England Conservatory and meet Michael Winograd my first day of school and realize and like get struck by a bolt of lightning. And then he said, oh, now you have to go learn. It was a very Hillel style moment. And so that's like my 5 hooks. So I guess like, you don't have to tell them all, but I think like if there are ones that you didn't realize were really big hooks versus the ones that you like, oh yeah, that was when I started really getting into it.
One that comes to mind is Jewish Gritty. That was an early hook.
That was a really great name. I loved those graphics.
I had recently moved to Philly in like summer 2020, and there were these dance parties outside of the convention center in November around the election. And was it you? So Elliot had this gritty mask that I think is Joni's gritty mask, but and it had what people on Twitter, I guess, thought was a yarmulke. It was just a hockey helmet and like payas. So it became this like meme and like was making the rounds on Twitter and stuff.
That video of us was the front page of the New York Times Twitter feed for like several hours that day.
So basically members of the Simcha band went to the convention center and were playing for this amazing crowd dance party that was, doing a kind of like round the clock dance party for a while. So that was an early one. And then from there I was like, okay, I'm gonna play with the Simcha band, of course. And I had already been planning to join Kol Tzedek. I think another hook is like, more than half of these people I run into like through organizing, like whether it's resource generation, if not now, Jewish Voice for Peace, like we're all seeing each other in meetings on this, like in the streets, at protests, we're planning things together, we're planning concerts for organizing base building events, we're bringing Yiddish music and culture into organizing. So I think that's another hook, was just like I kept running into the same people, whether it was like organizing or musicians I just met. So there was sort of a feeling of like inevitability about like, okay, this is my home, this is what I'm gonna do here. And yeah, I could go on, but I think I'm gonna pass the mic.
This is Elliot again.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, I started taking klezmer music seriously just about 6 years ago when my sister convinced Joni and me to go to Yiddish New York for the first time.
Go Rachel!
Yeah, shout out to Rachel Beck.
Shout out to Rachel Beck, who was around there when I was starting this, and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, some hooks before that, like, things like I didn't realize, but looking back, it was like, oh, my parents were really into like the '90s klezmer revival and like playing Brave Old World all the time, and Andy Statman, like songs of our fathers. Now it's like literally those are the songs of my father that I was like, oh, I remember like Moshe Emes, like when I like relearned that 6 years ago. It's like, how do I know this? And then I found on the old album, and then yeah, I think going to like Camp Ramah, like somehow like just like singing after like Shabbat dinner and like all the ruach we called it, and just getting like learning nigunim and things like that, getting that sort of just that sound in my ear, and then also the cantor at my synagogue in Pittsburgh at Beth Shalom was cantor Moshe Taube, which we knew was this amazing like old world European-born cantor who's like on Schindler's List is how he was saved, and now I have much more context for understanding who he is in like the bigger picture of the Chazonist tradition. But that was also just like something going on in my childhood, and so like there were, like you said, it's just some of the
This
pieces.
is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You discovered this about yourself.
Yeah. That I didn't have, I didn't put together until I was like, went to Yiddish New York and was starting to think about it, and it's kind of like I just decided to get into it. But there's, definitely some pieces to unearth.
This is Izzy again. Yeah, I relate to a lot of what y'all are saying. For me, when you ask that, the memory that comes up is I think I was in high school, and it was around Thanksgiving, and me and my mom and my grandparents went to a local like indie movie theater to see a documentary about Sholem Aleichem, the writer. And there were a bunch of interviews in that documentary that were in Yiddish and subtitled. And I remember my mom was like by far the youngest person in the theater before me, who was like, I was 16 and my mom was 50 and everyone else was in their 90s. And there were moments in the movie where something wasn't quite subtitled all the way, and there was a joke that me and my mom didn't know, but everyone else laughed because it was in Yiddish. And I just had this moment of responsibility. I was like, this can't end here. Like, I just felt so called. I was like, I just knew I would learn Yiddish one day. I was like, I don't feel called to start now, but I just know that at some point this will be part of my life, because it felt really clear. I was like, some young people need to work on this. And so that just like sat dormant for a while until a friend was like, oh, Yiddish is back on Duolingo. I was like, okay. Yeah. So I did Yiddish solo on Duolingo for a couple of years. That's how I got conversational. That's how I learned to read. But I think the reason that it has become such a huge part of my life, besides the fact that it's such a joy, it's such a fun language, like the sounds themselves are hooks, like learning what the phrases you always heard really mean, like it like opens up this clarity about like my childhood, my ancestry, like things that like just the way that older Jews speak, and be like, oh yeah, they're using Yiddish sentence structure. It's like it was like a puzzle piece that made a lot of things clear. But I think the fact that right as I was starting to learn it, somebody named Carter, shout out to Carter who moved to Boston, just reached out everywhere and was like, does anyone else learning Yiddish? I want a conversation group. And so instead of me just like being on my computer doing it on Duolingo, suddenly every other week there were like 5 of us who were meeting all the time, and there were always people dropping in and meeting new people, but it became a friend thing and a community thing, and that was what really solidified it, I think. And then on top of that, getting to do music with all of you. So
this is Miriam again. A very early hook for me was going to see Indecent on Broadway. And I went to see that play, and I felt like I had never seen so many aspects of myself on stage before, because it is a play about Ashkenazi Jewish queer theater makers. And I was like, oh my gosh. And there was so much Yiddish throughout the play, and it started to feel like this this aspect of my Jewish identity that was always kind of in the background, but and running through various parts of my life, but that I had never really investigated. A really like core memory that makes me really sad now is that when my mother and I were cleaning out her parents' house after they passed, we found a Yiddish typewriter. And at the time, neither of us really had any use for it. And so we didn't save it. And now I'm like, it's like gutting, of course, but you know, so there was just like this whole world and lineage, because there were things about, you know, my family, like Grandma Rose. I have my mom in the audience, so I'm gonna fact check with her. Was it Grandma Rose who was in my great grandma Rose, who was in the International Lady Garment Workers Union? Yeah. Wow. And there's a picture of the front page of the ILGW newspaper that's hanging in my mom's kitchen with Grandma Rose, and talking about her being one of the first women to retire from the union, with my mom, like, you were like, what, 4 years old in the image, right? And so I got inspired to learn more about Yiddish culture, which led me to Yiddish New York, which led me to Yiddish dance master Steve Weintraub. And part of what, like, as much as the familiarity, and like similarly, I was always not great at learning languages, and I found Yiddish to be so much easier to learn than any other language. Just like the words, the sounds, like something about it just like makes sense to me. But the dance really didn't make sense to me in a lot of ways. And so both, I think, the familiarity and also the unfamiliarity is what hooked me in, that I wanted to, it feels like learning about Yiddish uncovers a lot about assimilation and uncovers a lot about Jewish history and the Shoah, that like feels really, really rich to explore. So, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yes, but also I was also at the 2020 protest at the convention center with Steve Weintraub, and we led like a whole dancing circle, like a you know, whoever wanted to come in. So that also felt very like, oh, this is something that like in a broader sense is bringing people together, and like just an exercise in communal life and joy and movement in many senses of the word.
Thanks. You just reminded me of another huge part of the hook, which is that I was raised secular Jewish. I went to secular Hebrew school. And so my relationship with Judaism was always culture, language, music. And so to find Yiddish, because we learned Hebrew at my secular Hebrew school, and I never connected to it, and I never learned it. And then to find Yiddish, to be like, oh, right, like this is the heart of the secular Judaism that I grew up with, but was missing this piece. And I just really, really appreciate Yiddish as like a political and cultural home for Jews who either do or don't connect religiously or spiritually. It's just like another piece of what it means to be Jewish, and to have that as an alternative to Israel, an alternative to Hebrew, an alternative to Zionism means so much to me. And to offer that to people who are lost and looking for a home, a Jewish home, I just think Yiddish is waiting for all of us to be that. So I just wanted to say that.
Wait, Izzy, where was that here, or where were you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So nearby.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Maddie again. I don't have a ton to add because I feel like a lot of really good points have already been hit on, and so I don't. What were you about to say?
Yours.
No, yeah, I mean my hook was definitely through the music. I actually think I joined Cold Tzedek when I first moved to Philly in like 2018, and found a home here that I had never felt like as connected to Judaism as I have here. Like I grew up in the conservative movement, definitely had like was very culturally Jewish, went to Hebrew school, kept kosher, etc. But like, yeah, there was something about Cold Tzedek and like feeling like there was both like deeply rooted in tradition, but also just with my values, and like had moved forward with the times in a way that was really beautiful. And then through Cold Tzedek, I think actually it was Daniel who told me to join some club band. So, and then, yeah, Dan, you were a big part of my hook. And then Elliot told me about Quest Canada, and we went together, and that was totally life-changing, and that's where I met Miriam. And I feel like, yeah, so a big part of my hook is like everyone here, honestly. And yeah, just reiterating some of what people have said already of it being this huge awakening about my own past, not realizing that like Yiddish was sort of like hidden in Yiddish culture, maybe not the language, because my grandfather, he was probably the one of my 4 grandparents who spoke it, and he has now forgotten. He's like told me he doesn't really remember it much, which is kind of heartbreaking. But we've really bonded over it, and all my great aunts and uncles who are now passed, like they spoke it, and so yeah, I basically what I'm saying is like through the community, that was my hook, just because I was like, oh, my friends are doing this. This is so nice, and then this huge realization that this has been my home all along was so sweet and so gratifying to, like Izzy was saying, understand what, like have a context for like why older Jews talk and act the way they do. And I think especially the biggest one for me is probably through studying gesture and dance and like speaking gesture and just like understanding what older Jews are doing with their hands and like how that ends up like in the dance and yeah, like this, like whatever. But yeah, these things that are just like, that are no longer a thing for younger generations. And then one of the ways to carry them forward, because I'm not speaking the language, one of the ways to carry it forward is through the dance. So that feels really cool to me, to be able to preserve some of the gesture, at least. That's like an easy thing to teach and pass along.
That's awesome.
Hi, this is Sophie. I grew up in the Philly area. I grew up at the Jewish Children's Folk Shul, which was sort of a part of the Arbiter Ring. And my folks sent me there because they, moved here from New York and were sort of looking around for a community that felt like a right fit. And I think it was, we're just, this past week we've been cleaning out my grandmother's house and found my great-grandmother's wallet. And in it has her Arbiter Ring membership card. And so I think there was this is a place that makes sense for us. And so I felt like I did grow up with a fair bit of Yiddish around there, which I feel very fortunate. And so, and it was also, it was a multilingual, multicultural space of, we learned Yiddish songs, we learned Ladino songs, we learned, a lot of sort of aspects of culture from the diaspora, and really felt like I got a very diaspora-forward Jewish education, which I really treasure. But yeah, had, some Yiddish language there, a lot of Yiddish song. After Bat Mitzvah, hung around as, worked there every weekend and followed Fran Kleiner around, who was teaching Yiddish music, and carried the books and learned the songs. And I think that was a big hook for me, and ended up going to college, and my first year there took an intensive Yiddish class for the whole year with Sunny Yudkov, who's wonderful. And then kind of hit a place of, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And I felt like I was at a place where people were asking me to, like, okay, what's your career going to be? I was like, well, I love this, but I don't know what I'm doing with this. And I sort of, in any formal way, sort of it sat to the side for quite a while. And it stayed in my art and in my printmaking and in the songs that were still sort of very much in the bones, but wasn't sort of in any formal practice in my life for quite some time. And then a few years ago, I was cast in a production of Indecent, and getting to play this character that let me bring so much of myself to it, and getting to live in that, and getting to fall in love in Yiddish on stage every night was so special and sort of made me fall back in love with performing and back in love with Yiddish in such a very sort of profound feeling way. And the show has this line of like speaking about the show that the is about, Gott von der Komme, of like, Mr. Ash, your play, it changed my life. And I think for a number of folks, it interestingly, like experiences with Indecent in particular have done that, but also I think various performance experiences with Yiddish and getting to live in it and embody it in different ways. But yeah, and so it sort of prompted me to get back into classes, and it sort of felt like as soon as with Philly, I picked my head back up, that there was this incredible, vibrant community that was here and is doing really special things and is that I'm, able to hold a corner of and be a part of in lovely ways. And even, the very happenstance of I was at a Fringe show and looking at the postcards and Miriam came up and started chatting about their very incredible show about Yiddish. And literally just got, looped into it in that way. And I think that the specialness of being able to, there's something about Yiddish that I think opens up those sort of doors. And I've, felt it with family of folks, it unlocks stories. You mentioned to someone this, and then suddenly you're hearing a story about, oh yeah, and when I stood up in the Lower East Side on a bar table naked singing Romania, and you're like, I never heard that story before. I'm so glad I know it now. I think I've felt very nourished to be able to have caught this thread early and continue to find my way back to it, and that so many folks here are doing the work of weaving folks into it in really beautiful ways.
Hi, this is Joni again. Wow, so fun to hear everybody's stories. I want to give like the Cliff Notes version of mine, just because I know there's other questions too.
This is the story,
Yeah, it's true. My grandfather, Yiddish is his mama Lashon, he grew up speaking Yiddish in Lithuania. My grandmother did not grow up speaking Yiddish, she spoke German growing up, she was from Germany. But then but she played accordion, actually. She passed away when I was like 7 years old, so I don't have that many memories of her, but I did sort of inherit her accordion. And that was the first accordion that I played when I was like in college, basically, but I didn't, sadly, kind of similar to the story with the typewriter, this accordion is lost to the sands of time, but yeah, I started playing again when I found a record, which was the record Fresh Off Boat by the band Golem from New York. If you don't know them, amazing record, check it out, so much fun, truly like, because I'd like heard klezmer music in my youth, like in my synagogue growing up, there was a klezmer group, but it didn't like grab me, sort of, I don't know. And then, but this Golden record sure did. And then I was like, this is so cool. I want to learn more about this. So I got another accordion, and I met Rachel Beck, and she said, go to Yiddish New York, and I was like, okay. And the rest is history. I don't know. And then yeah, it's so funny that so many people have mentioned the Count Every Vote rally.
That was wild. I just want to shout out to, we'll get there.
Well, shout out to Dan Blacksburg.
Shout out to Rabbi Mo and Rabbi Ariel for going, hey, should we do this? Maybe, I think it was Mo here yet? I don't even remember. But it was like, that came together the night before. That was a crazy, are we segueing?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so, that was a crazy day. So this was, the Tuesday, so there was the election on Tuesday in 2020, and then we all knew it wasn't going to be decided that day. And then the next day, I had this absolutely bizarre count every vote thing that somehow, I forget who contacted me, but that was a real last minute thing with me and my friend Julius Masri on snare drum and Eva Budman on trumpet. We marched from I think we must have marched from City Hall to Independence Hall or the other way, I don't remember. And they were like, you're going to play music and it's going to be so great. But then these people just started yelling so loud, count every vote, that we just started playing bop, bop, ba-da, bop, bop, ba-da. But that was on 60 Minutes. And then that night I get a text from the rabbis here at Kol Tzedek. They're like, hey, we should do this. So I call the Simcha band. People, I mean, we were just getting to know each other. Well, I met, I think, at least especially the instrumentalists here. And then you had Joni, you had the gritty head, which was important, and we're like right outside. If you're familiar with Philadelphia, this is the street outside the Reading Terminal, so it's at 12th Street, and closed down. There's these really, really sad-looking like pro-Trump contingent sort of protesting right outside the convention center, and then it was just a fucking party. Yeah. It was the biggest party. And also, I had just gotten this mask from my friend Jessica Lurie that was cloth mask, because back then, and it had a hole in it, and you could put the trombone in. And I had played all day, actually, at several different voting stations and this was the first live music I had played all year in 2020. Wow. Was with a bunch of various friends playing different kinds, some klezmer, some other kinds of jazz and stuff, on election day and for early voting. I remember one day outside of Kappa, and the line was wrapped around the building twice. And we played for like hours, and it was just me and my friends rediscovering what playing live music together was like. And this was also one of these experiences. This was maybe like the third or fourth time I'd played live music. Boom! And then, of course, I have a Google Doc of all the news, because this really blew up on the internet. It was in a picture of Elliot's in Le Monde. And then also this Arabic news.
Arabi, the British Arabic language. Yeah.
It was the same photos, like with the gritty head on. I mean, and then, what is it? Liberté, égalité, grité. We stand our hockey mascot. Anyway, it's also this really great picture of this gritty with payas. It says Grit Shabbos. I don't have the sticker, but it's from back then too. And so I think everybody who's listening and everybody who's here, I really wasn't kidding about having multiple hooks, and I just want to say that although I know most of the people who are listening to this also have as much like sort of background, historical, maybe familial, maybe like other things, you don't have to have that. It just happens that we do. It's the easiest. Those are the easiest hooks to find. If you happen to be of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, and you had some Yiddish in your family, some engagement with Yiddish in your family, but it's not necessary. What is necessary, though, I think, is these kind of magical moments and community and people finding each other and something happening around that experience. Like, Sophie, you mentioned that you had probably the longest engagement with Yiddish in terms of your own life than maybe all of us here, because one of the things that I always get struck by is when people say, oh, well, of course I grew up with klezmer in my synagogue, because I had never heard that word until I was like 17. Or at least I don't remember hearing it. There was Yiddish songs, but as I've said before, they were really part of an international repertoire, and it was like Tumba Alaika, and I associated Tumba Alaika with this Joni Mitchell's The Circle Game, because they were sung with the same awesome folk singer Jackie Pack at Society Hill Synagogue. Shout out to Society Hill. And but then you do need homes for this stuff, and it's so great that we're recording this at Kol Tzedek, because more props to Rabbi Ariana Katz, so for me, the way that this all started was besides the idea of klezmer in the afternoon and doing stuff here year round, Ariana Katz happened to contact my good friend Daniel Kahn, who was one of her favorite musicians, and asked him to play her wedding. And he happened to be in the U.S. from his home in Berlin that week because of this crazy gig in Central Park that we were doing that the Folksbiene had put together. And so we played Ariana and Ever's wedding. I think this was also in 2015. And it was we were all like, who are these people? And then I find out that Ariana, I mean, I've been living in West Philly for a really long time already, and suddenly I'm at Colt Sedek, 2017, get dragged in even further, sort of do a hostile takeover of the Simcha band. And it's just, I can't even believe it, you know? And so what I really can't believe is how much time has passed since then, because it feels like this tiny piece of my life, even though it's this really big thing. So, you know, one of the things we can do this a little more piecemeal, but I want to give people a chance to talk more about like the work in Yiddish that you're doing now, and how, you know, I usually say in this podcast, it's like excitements, successes, challenges, and also what feels like it's changed you as much as like you've accomplished something, you know. And maybe we can start with the Shtetl Philly folks, because I know almost everybody up here was involved in that. Oh, that's right. Sorry, I have to do another thing, because these people are all very modest and they're also trying to like save time and stuff. But I just want to say a couple of other things for you know, each as I know you. But like Daniel Stern, I remember you telling me about taking Alicia Spiegel's fiddle class, because you know you were like, I play the trumpet, and then turns out now you really just want to play klezmer violin, which like good. And like, you know, Elliot, you got a working cymbal. I didn't even know those existed. And like Izzy, you showed up, or somehow everybody from Shtetl Philly came to my monthly bar gig at Abyssinia, and you sang Dear Gel, and there's such a great video, thanks to my dad Bob, who's out here, for taking that video, of just like a pile of people in a bar, sitting on the floor on chairs, standing around, just like hammering away through one of the great songs, you know. And like, you know, I could keep going, but like, yeah, so this Shtetl Philly also is like, one of the other things that happens is we make choices to be active. We make choices to continue this. We make a choice to do something in Yiddish. And you commit to that, and then you invite people, and then stuff happens, right? Then something happens. And so, yeah, you did that. Okay. What'd you do?
What are we doing now is the question?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like what is your work, and like successes, excitements, transformations, like, you know, yeah.
Yeah, this is Maddie again. Shtetl Philly right now is, the whole point of it in the beginning was that we wanted it to be a community effort and to be something that people could tap into and just use the name and do themselves, because the whole fun of it is that it's really fun to be together doing this, because Yiddish, more than anything, is not just a language, it's a culture, and you can't have a culture without a bunch of people who care equally about it. And so I think the thing I'm most excited about right now is that, yeah, like, you know, me and Miriam were like, we're gonna call it this thing, but everyone is like hopped on so enthusiastically.
Including me. I'm definitely doing that.
Yeah, which is the whole point. Yeah. And the most exciting thing to me is that, like, I don't want to hold responsibility for this. I don't want, like, you know, I just want to, like, everyone to come to my house and speak Yiddish and do Yiddish dance and sing in Yiddish, and that's what's happening. So what I'm most excited about is just that, and then I feel like our biggest success is making the vibe of like Yiddish New York and Klez Canada a little like more Hamish, and just bringing it into like literally my living room, and having people come and be able to hang out around Yiddish. And it's not as much about what they're learning as it is about meeting other people who are interested in learning it, so they can continue to collaborate. So yeah, we're doing another workshop series. We did one last year, and we're going to do another one. Details coming soon. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think also like Maddie sort of, when we started Shtetl Philly, Maddie was sort of thinking about a lot of what you were thinking about, Dan, like years ago of like, how do we do this year round?
Mm-hmm.
Because like we would go to, we met at Class Canada, and there was this great cohort of Philly Yiddish folks, many of whom are in this room. And we were like, this is amazing. And then we go home and it feels like, where did everyone go?
I remember that.
And I feel like, I think that some of this is just like the alchemy of like this moment, because pretty soon after, pretty much like right around the time that we started Shuttle Philly, Philly Yid also started. But it started to feel like there's like a framework. There's like a sort of like rhizomatic framework underneath, where it feels like things are always happening, and much less like we go and we learn a thing somewhere else, and then we come home and we're all in our houses being like, man, I wish I could sing some Yiddish songs right now.
Yeah.
And a lot more like we can just have a listserv and like say, I'm gonna have Shabbos at my house, and come over and we'll all sing Yiddish songs. And so having that be low key but present was, I think, the goal for us with Shtetl Philly. Also we get to do whatever we want. So like we get to host a Dybbuk themed haunted house because why not?
Yes.
And like it doesn't have to be the most serious scholarly thing in every moment, but also it can be that.
Yeah, and I think this is a good chance to start to, I'm going to interject so then we can sort of make it more of a conversation rather than like, here's my presentation of things. Because you all did that already, and you did it great. And I think, we already told people what they need to know, which is like, you just got to fall in love, and you got to fall in love your own way. And, but I love what you said about having the experience of like, we went to these programs, and I feel the most energized I've maybe ever felt. And it's amazing because you almost didn't get any sleep at the same time. But then you come home and you're like, what do I do now, right? And I remember that so many times.
Well, okay, so I don't know who here has like been to Jewish summer camp, but Class Canada was essentially Jewish summer camp for adults plus music and Yiddish culture. And so it just made me think of like this thing that, like the vibe of it was this thing that's really familiar to a lot of people, and then to have it be around Yiddish, it's like, I don't know, well, okay, I may be losing my train of thought also, but basically just like it's the community part of it that was most important, and so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is that when something like Class Camp and Class Canada were started, there was a sense that people had to build, like you had to create a hotbed. It was like, I don't know, I guess there's probably situations like when you have to make bread rise really fast, you can do it at the wrong, like a little too hot, but you risk some, you can get messes, you can have mistakes or whatever. And I think that, I know for me, and I've noticed this even just talking with all of you all recently, getting locked into that model. And it's also the New York thing, let's be honest. It's the New York thing of like, foot on the gas like a lead brick, like a brick that never lets up. Or I like to say like the Wile E. Coyote running off of the cliff, but you just never look. Well, if you never look down, you never fall, right? Sorry, I love you all, New York. But A, it's Philly, but B, there are so many other places in the world that also should be doing things like, this is important. One of the things that I loved, and I've seen other people do really successfully, is when you say, because you said peer-led, and you're like, no, we're gonna do it ourselves. Because honestly, you got to. So like, I had some segue for that, but yeah, get more into it.
That just makes me think about when Maddie reached out to me to be like, can you lead a language thing at the Shtetl Philly workshops? And I was like, no. I was like, no, I'm just learning myself. I'm a student. Like, of course I can't. Here's who maybe could. And Maddie was like, no, you don't have to be good at it to lead it. You don't have to know it already to lead it. And I chose to lead something around song as a way to learn language instead of like strict language. But I think it was really successful. Like I was nervous at how that would really feel because I knew there'd be people in the room who knew more than me about every piece of it, about music, about Yiddish, about whatever. And to really be like, no, that's okay. Like, we actually are creating spaces where it's not hierarchical. I'm just willing to pick the songs and then invite group knowledge and group process to sort of facilitate everybody's sharing. And so that does feel very Philly, and I love Philly for that. And it's also, just what you all created, and it's what allowed me to feel like I could lead this Fiddler Off and Dach thing, right? Because I started the whole Fiddler Off and Dach rehearsal with, I'm not the person in the room who knows the most Yiddish. I'm not the person in the room with the most theater making experience. I'm not the best singer. I'm just somebody who wants to do it and asked you all and you want to do it too. So like, please bring your own skills, right? So I think, what you're talking about feels very part of the ecosystem that we've created. And it makes it just feel really possible to try things and make mistakes and have people be like, oh, do you know what that word means? And I'm like, no, please tell me, right? Like, it's not embarrassing. I think that's really special.
And it's great because with Fiddler Off and Dach, when they did it in like with all the theater people,
Yeah.
most of those people didn't know anything about Yiddish either.
Yeah, it does feel so Philly. I know one of your other questions was what feels Philly about our work, so not to jump ahead, but
No, it's fine.
I do love the contrast of like a Broadway show versus like a with scripts rough and tumble. We read it through one time and we're gonna do it for you in Cold Set It. Like that feels very Philly. Like I'm proud that that's our version that we get here.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I really am. I'm really glad about this because as somebody who splits their time professionally and gets drawn into that energy all the time, especially around klezmer and Yiddish, I feel like well checked. And even though I know my own work also is very Philly in its own way, but I feel like you're like getting some crowbars in my stuck points and hitting me. And so this is why we're all here, right? Anybody else want to jump in on it?
I don't even know what question we're answering.
Talking to each other.
I'll start. So
Having a
What
conversation
are some of your favorite things that just like feel like the most exciting, like the best stuff?
Well, just back to.
Yes.
I'll try to get one thought together. Yeah, just listening to Maddie and Miriam talking about Shtetl Philly, and like, we don't have other Yiddish cultural organizations here in Philly so much. At least not in the city, and at least definitely not in West Philly. And yeah, Cold Set's been supportive of a lot of things, for sure. But it just the way I hear you telling the story is like, oh, well, these are like the seeds of just like a new institution perhaps one day, and you're being really deliberate about how you're designing that and structuring it, which is wonderful. But yeah, you're like laying the seeds for like a really wide, vast institution that can grow like very organically from different places and include different people and doesn't rely on a single person to like make it happen and is being very adaptable, and that's what I heard, and I'm putting together like, wow, this is really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, it is.
Back to your question, what is exciting?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, what were some successes? What were some moments for you and then everybody where you really felt like your explorations, like whether it was a performance, right? So a lot of us are performers. Something where you really felt like, oh, this is mine. This isn't something I'm trying, I'm working towards, but this is something that I have, I know that was really important for me to make that change.
Yeah, I'll say a moment that was really profound for me was in the first Shtetl Philly workshops. Maddie was leading the workshop on gesture and Yiddish dance, and like started us off with an icebreaker of like go around and say whatever you know about Yiddish dance, and like a good chunk of the room had learned everything they knew about Yiddish dance from me, which was wild because I was like in this point where Steve had just moved out of Philadelphia, and so I was starting to feel like, what does it mean for me to be a person who has spent a lot of time and energy studying Yiddish dance and acquired like knowledge to be able to teach it, and to now not be like the secondary person in the room, but also at the same time to be like super committed to spreading that knowledge and not being perceived as a sole expert. So it was really incredible, really, to like be in that room and hear that, and also be there to support Maddie in her teaching. And so some of like this connects to me to like the New York Philly thing, being a person who grew up in New York and moved to Philly about like 9 years ago. Just the feeling that like I think that both can exist.
Yes.
You know, in this beautiful way where like I have been able to do some like amazing professional Yiddish theater in the past couple of years, which has been incredible. And I am like part of my work and my existence in this world is also being in Fiddler auf den Dach with like some of my former Coltzatic Torah school students.
Yes.
Which is very Yiddish. I mean,
Yes.
like this is folk culture.
Mhm.
So like it like, you know, when I was reading the autobiography of Molly Picon, shout out Philadelphia, like she talks about doing these incredible big like performances and being in Hollywood movies and stuff, and also like singing in concerts for the community and having a very person-to-person relationship to the community. So I think that like having both of those exist at the same time is a really great way for us not to get celebrities, but to get like really knowledgeable, amazing, skilled humans, all words that I use because I don't like the word talent, which is a segue, you talk to me about it later, that are part of the community and like giving back as much as they're receiving in the community. End of soapbox.
Yeah, that's great. No, this is what's better than a podcast for a soapbox? I can also add more to the pile if we need.
I
No,
can
go
also
for it.
talk
Yeah,
at any point. I have so much to say.
That's great.
You and I are sitting in the
What
same
are
room.
what are I guess one of the questions I had for people who are doing, what are some of the ways that you that other parts of your creative life or your your efforts life, I don't know, I know there's a lot of people who do a lot of organizing up here. I think it's creative, but however you do that, and like what are some parts like that inform that like have that like you like really, I mean, I think we've talked a lot about how who we were informs of how we've come to this, or what our goals and maybe our politics and things like that have brought us to, like Yiddish activated that in a different way, or validated it in a different way, or found a new was like incredible fertilizer. But I was wondering about, so with the fertilizer thing, I was wondering how, whether it's been going back sort of like, and Joni, you're holding the mic, and I had the really extreme pleasure, like seriously, it was such a joy to get to record all of your awesome Bad Sound music. Joni wrote, please check the music out, it's still on Bandcamp, right?
Yeah.
You can check it out, and Bad Salmon, and some of the best horn writing and the most horn writing that I have done in a band in a really, really long time. And I'll just give one anecdote, which was when we were in the studio, we were working with Turtle Studios, thanks to Turtle, and also especially Jay Levin, who I met at Society Hill Synagogue many, many years ago. And he brought in this other trumpet player, Chris, what was the last name?
Oh
Well,
gosh,
whatever mine.
I'm so sorry.
He brought in another trumpet player who plays in John Legend's band and is a par excellence studio musician, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we had a great time playing together, but there's this one part in this tune, West Philly Waltz, that's a very klezmer line, and I take one look at it and I'm like, yeah, I got it. And then he was sweating it because it was just outside of his wheelhouse. And he's like, how's the trombone player hitting this harder than I am?
It's like these 16th notes in a Frankish mode.
And it's like, I told him, I was like, sorry, man, I have a head start on you. But like, so that's a perfect example of like, how is this stuff coming back? It's a very sort of one-to-one example of how it's coming back in. But like, what are we, and this sort of goes back to this idea of like, how has your engagement of this transformed you on a bigger level? And it doesn't have to be like work that you do outside of Yiddish or alongside Yiddish. I know for me, I have this just gigantic musical life that So there's always all these different parts and the way they interconnect. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it.
Chris Stevens, that's his name. the
Chris
trumpet player,
Stevens.
Yeah.
Excellent musician.
Yeah, yeah.
I love playing with him.
Yeah. But he wasn't ready for that klezmer.
No.
He hit it though.
He got it though.
Yeah,
He got it
for
though.
sure, for sure. Okay, cool. Here I am. I'm holding the mic. I don't know. I one funny story that I like to tell about my connection to Yiddish is when I went to Yidstock. This was actually before I went to Yiddish New York. This was 2017, 2018. So this is not a current thing, but it felt like eternal and timeless because I went to Yidstock at the Yiddish Book Center. Shout out to the Yiddish Book Center.
Yiddish Book Center. And Seth Rogaboy, who runs the festival.
Yeah. And I got a book there of Ruth Rubin's songs.
The big one that's like sort of longer than it is tall.
It's like a square.
Yeah, that's a good book.
Amazing book. Amazing book. And if you don't have it, like seriously, check it out or come look at mine. It's amazing. It's so cool because I was.
I have your copy.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my God.
Great. Clearly, I'm loaning it out to whoever wants to see it. But anyway, so I guess it's like sat on my shelf for a while. Okay, and then it was 2020, and we were all locked down during a pandemic, and I went to the index of this book because I was like, surely one of these Jews has lived through a pandemic and written a Yiddish song about it. And lo and behold, there's an amazing song called Dorten Winkel in Nassenkeller. It's like there in the corner of the dark cellar, legt ein Arbeiter mit der Brustfelle. He lies like a worker with tuberculosis. And it was the song about a tuberculosis epidemic of the worker specifically. And in the third verse, the worker cries out to the young narrator of the song is like why ask yourself, why am I dying this untimely death? It's because of the capitalists and the speculators, and they've like painted their palaces red with our blood, and you must take a vengeance for me, like you must avenge my untimely death. And I was like, holy shit, like what is this song? It was written in 20 something, I don't know. And just reading that text, I was like, wow, like, it could have been written, that day.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a moment for me where I was like, wow, the history of like music, history, the politics, and just like the treasure trove of Yiddish culture that's available to us if we just like start to look for it. It's pretty incredible. So case in point, in the Mariposas Galacticas, we have been doing this song recently, which I think by law, every Yiddish singer has to do at some point, which is Dele Police. And it's so much by law. They're enforcing that law. The klezmer police are going to come and make sure that you're singing it. Fuck them. Excuse me. Can I say that? Okay. Anyway, and in the Mariposas it's really funny because, like, if you search on whatever music search software platform you decide to use, and you search for Dele Police, you'll find so many different versions of it. And some of them actually are in Spanish. So we have like a Spanish-English Yiddish version of it, which Dan Blacksburg will one day hear. I'm convinced.
I'll hear it.
Someday. But
yeah, absolutely. And then
okay.
There was just a really good conversation about that song in an article, interview with Dan Kahn on Der Spectre, which is a website that I'm just getting to learn about. But yeah, I mean, that's a song that it's just this stuff. I don't know, what is it? It comes and reaches out from the past and just like grabs you by the throat.
Because it doesn't feel like it's past. It's like you said. Sorry, I don't need to say that much. Yeah, it's just amazing when something that's so old doesn't feel old. You're like, it is then and it is now. Yeah. I can keep talking. One thing to know about me is I can talk.
Me too.
Should
That's
I
why
say more? Okay. A story that came to me when you asked like moments when you realized like how Yiddish has fertilized your life is that I was at a wedding this fall and I was talking to a stranger. And I was talking about how great Philly is and how everyone should probably move to Philly and asking them how they had chosen where they live and they didn't really like it and where they might want to go next. And we were talking about that for a long time. And then a little while later it came up that I study Yiddish and they just said to me, your whole thing is like rootedness. Like that seemed, you're really into roots. And I was like, huh, cool. Like I think Yiddish gave that to me. Like I don't think that's been my whole thing before. But just having that reflected back to me of like, you're really you really believe in the importance of connecting to your roots and being rooted in a place. So like both the Philliness and the Yiddishness, and how rooted that makes me and how much that supports me to live my best life was like a cool reflection to get from somebody, and I think Yiddish has given me that. Want me to talk more?
No, I'll yeah, go ahead, and I'll move us on.
I was thinking about with the question of like other aspects of your life that inform your Yiddish work, and what I was thinking is sort of how much, for me, and I think that what I've seen for other folks is it really is something which whatever you bring to it can grow through it, and sort of this love, rhizomatic also, but that sort of idea of like whatever sort of these pieces of your life that have been growing in other places can then sort of reach back through that soil of Yiddish. And I don't know, for me, had sort of a cool moment of that this summer at Evo of I was a high school teacher and I've taught visual art, and had a moment of like, oh well, it's the end of the summer and we should make something creative. We should get our hands on something. And sort of my refrain for the summer, people would be like, well, what do you do with Yiddish? Which is a wonderful question, and people do, especially there, so many incredible professional academic things. And I was like, I'm not on a job interview with the language, I'm on a date. With that, and like we could, you can go out dancing on a date. You can go to music. And with this, it was sort of like, okay, we're gonna get together and do something creative. And it was like, bring all the scraps of the stories that have been handed out and the texts that you've marked up this summer, and I'm going to print out a bunch of them on transparency paper, and basically did a zine collage and cyanotype workshop.
Yeah.
And was like, oh, I am using the practices that I used to teach text in a high school social studies and English classroom, and I'm using the practices that I used to like help folks get their hands around historical documents and academic language, and I'm using the practices that I used to teach a workshop on the Declaration of Independence with cyanotype here in Philly. And I can bring these pieces, and we can all bring these, all these pieces of text and all these sort of patchworks of our lives and our practices into this. And that sort of felt like, for me, sort of a representative of what this can be. And when you said sort of like that I've been with it longer, I don't think that's true. I think I may be worse at editing my personal narrative than maybe other work and size folks on this panel. But I think that it's sort of that Yiddish can be a space where whatever has been growing in your life, if you want to bring it to it, it has a chance to grow through it in some lovely ways.
Yeah, that's well said. So I'm going to grab it, and we're going to move towards a close here, and then we're going to have a little bit of time for maybe like 3 questions from everybody who's here. But what I want to say alongside that is that the last recent episode that we put out was with Sephardic scholar, Sephardic everything scholar, Ladino scholar Devin Narr from the University of Washington, and I was introduced to him on a podcast where he talked about multi-rootedness as opposed to a sort of a flip side of the rootless cosmopolitan, which is something that I've identified strongly with as something that's like really fun as an identity, where it's like, yo, you can't like, I am from here, I'm from where I need to be, but he kind of took it to the next level for me, which is this idea of multi-rootedness. And I think that there's something about, a diaspora people, a diaspora language, the way, and most specifically, and I think it's hard, I think we forget about this a lot, the way that the Jewish people and the non-Jewish people who decided to bring this culture and this language and this music back into the world when it had sort of, a lot of it had become muted or had become kind of sidelined, where they did it in a way where they consciously made it open to everyone. When I was first starting out, I was in a band that had somebody who was from the Santeria tradition, which is the Afro-Cuban like mystical drumming tradition. And I tried asking him. I was used to when you have questions that somebody would answer them, and he did not. He would not answer any of those questions because I was not from that group of people, and because he did not. And that's you don't share. But we decided, we being the much larger we that all of us are a part of, even though we weren't there in the 70s or earlier, or when YIVO was being created, we decided to share it with everybody, that was going to be the bottom line, is that this is available to everybody. So, this is getting back to anybody who's listening who doesn't have 6 grandparents who spoke Yiddish, or grew up with 16 klezmer bands, or her, like, the thing that you just discover this and go, wait, what? Like, for better and for complicated, you can have this. We give this to you. I always say this, right? Like, this is offered to everybody. It's open source, right? And I think that's one of the great things about being in Philadelphia, because Philadelphia is the place where you can just go and do something, because there's no one's gonna stop you. No one's gonna stop you. No one might recognize it, but you can just go do it. And I can tell you, like, people who come down, who spend significant amounts of time here from other places, they're like, what the heck is this? So we get to really, like, I'm so grateful to be in this, like, cohort of 8 people up here, and this is only some of us. Some of us who are out in the audience, and who are just, like, doing this year round, rocking it out, trying to do it on your own terms, and, like, from where you are. And so I think that that's really exciting. And I want to just go down the line one time saying, like, shout out something that you've got coming up, or some hope that you really want. It could be, like, as simple as, listen to my band, I love it. Or, like, I can't wait to, like, do a giant performance where we saw at the Kimmel Center, or whatever. I don't know. I want both of those things.
Great, amazing. So the Mariposas are playing with West Philly Orchestra on Sunday, March 1st at the Rotunda, supposedly.
This won't be out by then, but it's okay.
So is it coming out?
Whenever we can.
Okay. Well, we'll also be playing some other shows. Follow us on Instagram.
Follow Mariposas
You'll see.
on Instagram.
You'll see all the shows on there. I just wanted to make one quick comment about when you said rootless cosmopolitan, because I love that phrase. And one of the things that in the Mariposas, Kara's laughing right now because she will often, like, introduce the band and be like, and desde Ecuador, y Peru, y Vermont, y Philadelphia. And then, like, she asked me one time, like, where do you want me to say, Joni, where do you want me to say that you're from? Like, where are you from? Which is a very rude question to ask somebody, which obviously
How do you want me to do it? That's a respectful question.
And so, but seriously, I have, like, an identity crisis.
Good.
Because I grew up in Richmond, but my family's
Figure
not
it
from
out.
there. And my, like, Ashkenazi on my dad's side, and, like, Chinese Indonesian on my mom's side. And, like, I live in Philly, but I don't feel like I'm from Philly. So I said, introduce me as a rootless cosmopolitan. And so that's, yeah.
Which I did.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Tell us, if we were on a fancy podcast, you'd be like, tell us where to find you on your internet. But, like, you can do that. You can say, like, where's your work? But also, like, yeah, like, what's driving you right now? What's coming up?
You can find me on the internet as Bagel Printmaking. And for the Dach coming up, we have lots of, we'll have this programming in the spring. Programming in the spring. Keep an eye out. Stay tuned.
Yeah, Shtetl Philly is going to have a workshop series coming up in March or April. If you want to know more about Shtetl Philly things in general, I'm also, I feel like we're also trying to do more Yiddish cabarets and just generally fun things. Come find us, either if you're in the room, come find us and get on our listserv, and if you're not in the room and you're listening to the podcast, you can email shtettlphilly@gmail.com to be on our listserv, and thankfully Izzy is doing
Fixing the listserv.
amazing work to fix the listserv because me and Miriam were just botching it.
Yes, you can also follow Shuttle Philly on Instagram.
Oh yeah.
Hot news, breaking news, I guess, is that oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. We are planning to have a pre-Yom Kippur ball in the spirit and tradition of anarchist, communist, and socialist Yom Kippur balls, which were held in London, in New York, and yes, indeed, right here in Philadelphia, on Yom Kippur. We're not going to do that. We're going to do it before Yom Kippur with food and drinks and dancing and stuff. So now that I've said it on a podcast, we're going to make it happen. You can, I think I said this, but you can follow Shuttle Philly on Instagram. You can also follow me, Miriam, at miriam.moves on Instagram. And my mom and I are going to be doing our duo show, Women of Helm, in Philly and also in New York. It's based on a book that was written by our good friend Jenny Tango about the untold stories of the Women of Helm. And Jenny is turning 100 this year. So this is part of her 100th birthday celebration.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I can't there's so much to react to what you just said. I am excited about Filler Off and Dach, but that will be over by the time this podcast comes out.
You missed it.
I will say I am excited about, I think one of my roles in this work is like connector, and I do feel like I'm trying to be aware of all the different Yiddish groups in Philly, because we didn't even talk about this, but there are other conversation groups in Philly of older people, of people in the suburbs, and we're like trying to create connections between all of them, where even if we're not going to form one giant social conversation group, we visit each other's conversation groups. And so I am combining the Shtetl Philly listserv, the Philly Yid listserv, the Fiddler Off and Dach email list, and all those other lists into one big calendar. So maybe we can put the sign up link to that in the description of this episode.
Absolutely.
So if you want to be getting the monthly Yiddish cultural events calendar, you can do that.
Yeah, it's really time for one of those.
Yeah,
We have so
it
much
turns
going
out
on.
we have so much going on. So we just sent out the first one in January. You haven't missed much. And beyond that, like, I'm just excited about, like, really trying to, the phrase that just keeps coming in my head, I'm trying to get Yiddish in everybody's mouth. I'm just, like, really trying to, every time I go to a folk sing, I bring one Yiddish song. Every time I go to a holiday gathering, I bring one Yiddish song. Anytime I'm with any people, I'm like, have you said any Yiddish words this year? Because there are some.
Are you Jewish?
Yeah, that's me. That's
Beautiful.
so that's what I'm trying to do.
I will swing that
Yeah.
I also just wanted to say there's some great conversation happening around regional Yiddish stuff. So we're trying to connect with the scenes in Baltimore and DC and New York. So if you're listening to the podcast and you're like, wow, great things are happening in Philly, good news, you might be driving distance and you should come and visit us.
That's
And you
right.
should tell us about your things that are happening so that we can get a caravan of folks together to come visit you. Because when Philly's there, it's a party.
We similarly just decided today that Sophie is going to design a Philly-specific Yiddish font based on the Eagles font. Yeah, we decided that in the lobby while we waited for you all to come. So announcement. It just happened. Hot off the presses.
We're doing it.
Let's see. Yeah, you can check out West Philly Orchestra at WPO Brass. Die Katzenmusik does not have any sort of
We're
public.
a really slow burn, folks.
Yeah, any sort of public way to find us, but
Come to
Except
the
on the
city
listserv.
council.
Yeah.
Come to the
Start
listserv.
meowing.
Yeah, just stop meowing or come to city council members Rue Landau's holiday party.
Yes.
We have a dance party in May, right?
Oh yeah, we're getting there.
But yeah, Die Katzenmusik is always around, and yeah, so okay, very long term. Yeah, hopefully this definitely will be after the podcast. Working on a klezmer drumming book, which may be the first, maybe the first of its kind ever, if it happens. But starting to have some serious talks about that next week. with a possible publisher. So keep an eye out for that. I don't know how long something like that takes. We'll find out. Yeah, and also maybe performances of Daniel and my fiddle cymbal duo in the sometime future. Keep an eye out.
Fiddler, obviously. Looking forward to Shtetl Philly workshops. Zimmel, who's in the audience, we're going to be co-leading a klezmer phrasing and like instrumental learn by ear workshop. So keep your eye out for that. Excited for Dikatsa music dance party that I hope happens.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. Very
Maybe
excited
at
for
the-
Purim.
Well, we're definitely you got to book us
ball.
for the Purim for the
Yeah.
Yom Kippur ball.
Yeah.
I guess this is more just for people actually in the live audience because it won't be out in time. But yeah, it'll be a family-friendly Purim show with a kids' hour. So bring your kids, bring the whole family. It'll be at the Rotunda from I think 6 o'clock. We're starting on
That's
March 1st.
March 1st.
Sunday, March 1st. And also keep an eye out for Susan Watts has a new album coming
That's
out.
right, a
that
bunch of us played on
Dan and Elliot and I all recorded on. So that will hopefully come out in 2026. Bunch of Philly klezmer tunes on that.
Yeah, there's so many threads, there's so many things. We didn't really even get to talk about how we relate to Philadelphia as it is today. Maybe that's something we can all get together and talk about, sometime for the uncensored version. And then there's so many historical things to still draw on. Like we're still learning new Philly-specific klezmer tunes. There's still all this other history that we can bring out, and we just make it. I think what's amazing to hear is how, regardless of how long we've been doing this, all the things are happening. The past to the present. The explosion of like the feeling of multi-rootedness, the creativity, the intergenerational thing that you were talking about, Miriam, about having an intergenerational experience with people you taught. This is all of the best things that have emerged, have been constructed, have been deliberately sown in the seeds deliberately sown of this world, and this is what's happening in Philly right now. And we're going to keep going. And it's just getting started, people. All right. Well, that was my conversation with so many great people from the Philly Yiddish scene. We had Miriam Coppersmith, Maddie Rabin, Izzy Abraham Ravison, Elliot Beck, Daniel Stern, Sophie Rose Seymour, and Jonathan Leibovic. That's a lot of folks at Colt Senex Synagogue. You know where it's at in West Philly. So I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you're feeling inspired like I am. I'm feeling so inspired. I hope you'll hear this in time and decide to come down on a whim or join us at the Shtetl Philly workshops this weekend. And if not, stay tuned for more. There's lots more coming up. In the meantime, give us all your excess money. There are really too many great things to give your money to, so give them first, and then hopefully you can have some couch change or anything else, and we can give you even more radiant others. That's what I want to do for you. So, stay radiant, and good Shabbos.